Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey back in time, high into the rugged, majestic peaks of the Andes. Imagine for a moment, you're standing at an impossible altitude, the air thin and crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant, blooming something. Below you, not far from where your worn leather sandals stand, the mountainside drops away, but it's not a sheer, terrifying cliff. No, it's a meticulously sculpted landscape, a giant staircase of green and gold, each step teeming with life. You can almost feel the cool stone under your fingertips, smell the rich soil, hear the gentle rustle of leaves in the impossibly blue sky. This isn't just a pretty view, though. It's a monument to human ingenuity, a testament to how an entire empire fed itself in one of the most challenging environments on Earth. You're about to explore the simple, yet profoundly clever pleasures of farming in the Inca Empire. Now, you might think farming is just farming, but when you're dealing with land that literally tries to climb into the clouds, things get a little more interesting. You probably would unsurvive a single growing season up here without a crash course in Inca agricultural wizardry. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on a vast plateau, or perhaps nestled in a verdant valley, surrounded by mountains that scrape the sky. This is the heartland of the Inca Empire, Tawantinsuyu, a realm stretching across thousands of miles of incredibly diverse terrain. When you think of ancient empires, your mind might drift to the flat plains of Egypt or the fertile crescent of Mesopotamia. But the Incas decided, quite audaciously, to build theirs vertically. Their agriculture, therefore, had to be as extraordinary as their ambition. You see, the Incas didn't just farm, they sculpted the very mountains themselves, turning impossible slopes into productive fields. This wasn't just about putting seeds in the ground. It was about understanding every nuance of the land, coaxing sustenance from rock and thin air. One of the most mainstream historical facts about Inca farming, and perhaps the most visually striking, is their use of terraces. You see them everywhere, carved into hillsides like immense green amphitheaters. Imagine someone taking a colossal, invisible shovel and simply flattening out sections of a mountain, one above the other, forming giant steps. These aren't just decorative, they're incredibly functional. Each terrace, created a level platform for planting, preventing erosion that would otherwise wash away precious topsoil down the steep slopes. But they did so much more than that. They acted as giant solar collectors, absorbing the sun's heat during the day and radiating it slowly at night, protecting delicate crops from the brutal Andean frosts. It was like building a series of microclimates, tiny thermal blankets woven into the fabric of the mountain. Now, for a quirky, fringe tidbit, some of these terraces, like those at Moray, look less like traditional farms and more like giant, concentric circles, almost alien in their precision. Historians still argue whether Moray was primarily an agricultural laboratory, a place where the Incas experimented with different crop varieties at various temperatures and humidity levels, or if it had a more spiritual, ceremonial purpose. You can almost picture an ancient Inca agronomist, perhaps with a peculiar hat, carefully observing rows of maize and potatoes, taking notes on a quipu, their knotted string record-keeping device, which, let's be honest, probably made their accounting slightly more interesting than yours. It's not hard to imagine them saying, "Ah yes, the potato on the 7th terrace down is responding beautifully to the morning sun, unlike Bartholomew's cousin, who wilted under pressure." The effort involved in constructing these terraces was staggering. You weren't just digging a hole. You were moving tons of earth and stone, creating retaining walls, and then filling each level with carefully selected soil. This wasn't a solo project. It was a communal endeavor, a symphony of organized labor. Everyone contributed, understanding that the health of the community depended on the success of these monumental agricultural feats. You could call it ancient civil engineering, but with a much more grounded, dirt under the fingernails kind of feel. It wasn't about building grand palaces. It was about building the foundation of their very survival, one stone-lined step at a time. And in doing so, they found a quiet harmony with the land, transforming it without conquering it, creating a landscape that still whispers tales of their ingenuity to this day. With something so unassuming, yet so incredibly versatile, the potato. Forget your average russet or Yukon gold. In the Andes, you'd encounter a bewildering array of shapes, sizes, and colors. Some as small as marbles, others gnarled and robust. These weren't just food, they were a lifeline. The Incas cultivated an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 varieties of potatoes, each adapted to specific microclimates and altitudes, from frost-kissed plateaus to warmer valleys. This incredible biodiversity wasn't just for show. It was a sophisticated form of food security. If one variety failed due to disease or unusual weather, countless others would still thrive. It was like having a culinary safety net woven from starchy goodness, especially in the colder, higher elevations where other crops struggled. It was incredibly nutrient-dense, and perhaps most importantly, could be preserved through a unique process called chuño. Now, for a quirky tidbit, making chuño wasn't exactly a glamorous process. This was repeated for several days, letting the sun dry them out, resulting in a lightweight, dehydrated, almost mummified potato that could last for years, even decades. It's like the ultimate freeze-dried meal kit, only far less aesthetically pleasing than those modern camping rations. And yes, historians still argue whether the chuño-making process was as fun as it sounds. Perhaps even a quiet chuckle at the squishy sensation underfoot. You can almost feel the chill morning air on your bare feet as you join the communal stomping, a surprisingly rhythmic activity. The process effectively removed most of the water, concentrating the starches and sugars. This wasn't just about preservation. It changed the potato's texture and flavor, making it spongy and bland on its own, but perfectly suited for rehydration in stews and soups. It was the original, just add water food. And for an empire that needed to feed vast populations and supply armies on the move, chuño was an invaluable asset, a lightweight, non-perishable caloric bomb. Think of the sheer effort, planting thousands of varieties, meticulously observing their growth, and then, if you lived in the colder regions, enduring the rigorous chuño process. It was about intelligent, diversified cultivation that respected the land's nuances. Each terrace, each valley, each altitude offered a different microclimate, a different opportunity for a specific potato to thrive, about which particular tuber preferred which particular patch of earth. It instilled a deep connection to the land and its cycles, a quiet understanding that the bounty of the earth was not to be taken for granted, but carefully nurtured. And you, as an Inca farmer, were a quiet custodian of this incredible agricultural heritage.
Beyond the humble potato, another quiet giant of the Inca agricultural world was quinoa. While often hailed today as a modern superfood, for the Incas, it was simply a fundamental part of life. A high-protein grain that thrived in the very same high altitude, cold conditions that made other crops falter. Imagine a field of quinoa, its stalks reaching skyward, laden with clusters of tiny, pearly seeds. Depending on the variety, these seed heads could shimmer with hues of red, purple, or gold, creating a surprisingly vibrant tapestry against the muted greens of the Andean landscape. It wasn't just sustenance. It was beauty, a quiet testament to the earth's bounty. A mainstream historical fact about quinoa is that it was considered one of the sacred crops by the Incas, second only to maize in its ceremonial and dietary importance. They called it the mother grain, recognizing its incredible nutritional value and its resilience in harsh environments. You see, quinoa isn't just protein-rich. It contains all 9 essential amino acids, making it a complete protein, something quite rare in the plant kingdom. For a population living at high altitudes, often with limited access to animal protein, this was absolutely crucial. It meant sustained energy for long days of farming, building, and maintaining the vast Inca infrastructure. Now for a quirky tidbit. The Sapa Inca, the emperor himself, would often ritually sow the first quinoa seeds of the season using a golden chacatacla. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It underscored the profound respect and reverence the entire empire had for this unassuming grain. You can almost picture the scene, the Sapa Inca adorned in his finest regalia perhaps, looking a bit like he's about to open a very important supermarket, carefully pushing the golden plow into the earth, signifying the start of the planting cycle. It's a far cry from modern agriculture, where the CEO of a multinational food corporation probably eyes into personally planting the first genetically modified corn seed. And historians still argue whether this ritual act truly brought better harvests, or if it was simply a clever piece of imperial public relations. Either way, it certainly boosted morale. The cultivation of quinoa wasn't as labor-intensive as some crops, but it still required careful attention. You'd prepare the soil, often enriching it with natural fertilizers, and then meticulously sow the tiny seeds. The plants themselves are quite hardy, capable of withstanding both frost and drought, which made them a reliable staple in the unpredictable Andean climate. Once harvested, the seeds needed to be processed. Unlike rice or wheat, quinoa seeds have a bitter outer coating called saponin, which needs to be removed. This was traditionally done by rinsing the seeds thoroughly in water, often in flowing streams, until the bitterness was gone. Imagine the communal effort, women and children gathered by the water, their hands sifting and washing, the rhythmic swish of the seeds a constant background hum. It was a simple, yet essential, step in transforming the raw grain into a nourishing meal. You might find yourself wondering why such a versatile and nutritious grain fell out of widespread use after the Spanish conquest. It was largely because the Spanish preferred European grains like wheat and barley, and actively suppressed the cultivation of native crops. For centuries, quinoa remained a local indigenous food, cultivated primarily by Andean communities for their own consumption. It's only in recent decades that the rest of the world has discovered it, hailing it as a new superfood, oblivious to its thousands of years of quiet, sustaining service in the Inca Empire. So, as you drift off, perhaps picture those shimmering fields of ancient quinoa, a testament to enduring wisdom and the quiet resilience of the land and its people.
While potatoes and quinoa formed the high-altitude backbone of Inca's sustenance, descending into the warmer valleys, you'd encounter the majestic maize or corn. Imagine sprawling fields of tall green stalks their tassels swaying gently in the breeze, and plump ears hidden beneath rustling leaves. For the Incas, maize wasn't just another crop, it was revered, practically divine. Its versatility meant it could be eaten fresh, dried, ground into flour, or, perhaps most famously, fermented into chicha, a mildly alcoholic beverage central to social and ceremonial life. A mainstream historical fact is that maize held immense spiritual significance for the Incas, often depicted in their art and rituals. They believed it was a gift from the gods, essential for both physical nourishment and spiritual connection. You'd see maize cobs fashioned from gold and silver in their temples, a testament to its revered status. It wasn't merely food, it was a symbol of prosperity, fertility, and the very connection between the heavens and the earth. Planting maize was often accompanied by prayers and offerings, ensuring a bountiful harvest. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the Incas cultivated a dizzying array of maize varieties, far more than you'd ever see in a modern supermarket. Some had kernels as large as your thumbnail, others were tiny and colorful, ranging from deep purple to bright yellow to speckled black. Each type was perfectly suited for a specific purpose, some for grinding into flour, others for popping, and many specifically for brewing chicha. Imagine an Inca farmer selecting seeds, not just for yield, but for the exact color and texture of the resulting beverage. It's like being a master brewer and a farmer rolled into one, only with a lot more dirt under your fingernails. And historians still argue whether some of the more unusually shaped maize cobs found in archaeological sites were purely ceremonial or had some forgotten practical applications. Perhaps they were just for really, really good popcorn. Cultivating maize in the Andes was a delicate dance with the environment. While it preferred warmer valleys, ingenious terracing and irrigation extended its reach into higher, cooler regions. You'd prepare the soil meticulously, often using a footplow, the chacatacla, which you'd drive into the earth with your foot, turning the soil. It sounds simple, almost primitive, but in skilled hands, it was incredibly efficient for breaking up clods and preparing furrows. Imagine the rhythmic thud of these plows, a steady heartbeat across the landscape as communities worked together. The planting itself was often a communal affair, with songs and rituals accompanying the placement of each precious seed. Once harvested, the maize was often dried on the cob and stored in specialized granaries called qollqas, which we'll delve into later. But a significant portion would be set aside for chicha. This fermented corn beer was low in alcohol, usually around 1 to 3%, but it was consumed in vast quantities during festivals, religious ceremonies, and even as a daily refreshment. Imagine the communal gatherings, the air filled with laughter, and the gentle hum of conversation. As clay cups of chicha were passed around, it wasn't about getting heavily intoxicated. It was about social cohesion, a shared experience that reinforced community bonds. It was the original happy hour, only with a far more ancient and wholesome vibe than your local pub. So, as you slowly drift off, picture those golden fields of maize swaying in the Andean sun, a symbol not just of sustenance, but of community, ritual, and the enduring connection between the Inca people and their sacred earth. As your journey through the gentle hum of Inca farming continues, let's turn our attention to the unsung heroes of the high Andes, the Andean camelids, primarily llamas and alpacas. These weren't just fluffy, picturesque animals. They were indispensable to the Inca way of life, fulfilling roles that no other creature could in that challenging environment. Imagine a quiet procession winding along a narrow mountain path, laden with bundles, their soft footsteps barely disturbing the silence. That's the rhythm of a llama caravan, a familiar and reassuring sight. A mainstream historical fact about these animals is their crucial role as beasts of burden. Llamas, with their calm demeanor and sturdy build, were the primary transporters of goods throughout the vast Inca Empire. You wouldn't see horses or donkeys here. They simply weren't suited to the steep, rocky terrain and thin air. Llamas, however, were perfectly adapted. They could carry loads of up to 70 pounds, often traveling in long trains, led by a single herder, covering impressive distances across the challenging landscape. It was slow-paced, methodical transport, fitting perfectly with the unhurried rhythm of Andean life. Think of them as the original Amazon delivery service, only with much more wool and a tendency to occasionally spit if they felt particularly annoyed, which, let's be honest, is a feeling many of us can relate to after a long day. Now for a quirky tidbit. Llamas and alpacas also played a vital role in fertilizing the fields. Their droppings, rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, were carefully collected and spread across the terraces, replenishing the soil nutrients that were constantly being depleted by intense farming. This was particularly important in the often thin rocky soils of the Andes. Imagine the quiet, unassuming work of collecting these natural fertilizers, a task done with respect for the animals and the land. It was a completely sustainable system where the animals provided transport, wool for clothing, and the very means to keep the fields fertile, a beautiful closed loop of ecological harmony. And historians still argue about the exact methods and rituals associated with this practice, though it's clear it was a critical component of Inca agricultural success. Beyond transport and fertilizer, these animals provided another essential resource: fiber. Alpacas, in particular, were prized for their incredibly soft, warm wool. Imagine the sensation of finely woven alpaca textiles, soft against your skin, providing comfort in the cool Andean nights. This wasn't just about clothing. It was about warmth and protection in a high-altitude climate where temperatures could fluctuate wildly. The wool was shorn by hand, a gentle process, and then spun into thread by women using simple drop spindles, a quiet, rhythmic activity that you might observe as you pass by a village. The resulting textiles were not only practical but also deeply significant, reflecting status and identity within Inca society. The quality of your poncho, for instance, might say quite a lot about your standing, though probably not as much as the brand of your sneakers does today. You'd also find that these camelids provided a source of meat, though it was consumed less frequently than plant-based foods. When it was, every part of the animal was used, minimizing waste, a core principle of Inca resourcefulness. The bones might be fashioned into tools, the hides into leather goods. Nothing was squandered. So, as you continue to relax, picture these gentle, intelligent creatures, their soft hum echoing across the mountainsides, silent partners in the remarkable agricultural achievements of the Inca Empire. They were not just animals. They were living threads woven into the very fabric of Inca civilization. As you settle deeper into the soft drone of history, let's explore one of the most astonishing feats of Inca ingenuity: their water management systems. In a land where water could be scarce in one valley and torrentially abundant in another, The Incas mastered the art of directing and conserving this precious resource with an elegance that still impresses engineers today. Imagine the quiet murmur of water, channeled precisely along stone-lined paths, bringing life to parched fields hundreds of miles from its source. This wasn't just about digging ditches. It was about understanding the very flow of the land, coaxing water to go exactly where it was needed. A mainstream historical fact about Inca irrigation is the sheer scale and complexity of their canal networks. These weren't simple trenches. They were sophisticated systems of interconnected canals, aqueducts, and reservoirs, some stretching for tens of kilometers across difficult terrain. You'd see water diverted from distant mountain springs, glacier melt, or even underground sources, then guided carefully along contours, sometimes through tunnels carved into solid rock, to reach terraces and fields. It was an incredible public works project, maintained communally, ensuring that everyone had access to the water necessary for survival. Think of it as a vast, ancient plumbing system, only instead of your kitchen faucet, it was supplying life to an entire empire's food supply. Now, for a quirky tidbit, some of these Inca canals incorporated surprisingly sophisticated engineering principles, almost resembling modern hydraulic designs. They sometimes included gentle inclines that maintained a steady, non-erosive flow of water, and even simple settling basins to remove sediment before the water reached the crops. Imagine an Inca engineer, perhaps with a measuring stick and a surprising grasp of fluid dynamics, carefully calculating the perfect slope. It's almost as if they had a secret manual on how to build a tranquil water feature that also feeds thousands of people. And historians still argue about how much of this precise engineering was based on empirical observation versus deliberate theoretical design. Perhaps it was a beautiful blend of both, a quiet conversation between human ingenuity and the natural world. The management of these water systems was a communal responsibility, deeply ingrained in the fabric of Inca society. You wouldn't just take water. You'd participate in its maintenance, cleaning debris from canals, repairing stone linings, and ensuring fair distribution were all tasks performed collectively through the meta system, which we'll discuss more later. This collaborative approach meant that the water flowed not just for individual benefit, but for the well-being of the entire community. It fostered a sense of shared ownership and mutual reliance, a quiet understanding that everyone's livelihood was connected by these life-giving channels. You might observe ingenious features like puquios, underground channels used to tap into subterranean water sources, or carefully constructed reservoirs that collected rainwater during the wet season to be used during drier periods. These systems were not just about delivering water. They were about maximizing efficiency and minimizing waste, ensuring that every precious drop served its purpose. It was a testament to their deep respect for natural resources and their commitment to long-term sustainability. So, as you drift gently into sleep, let the image of flowing water, carefully guided by ancient hands, bring a sense of peaceful continuity to your mind, with the grand scale of terraces and irrigation systems quietly receding into your mind. Let's focus now on the individual farmer, the hands that tilled the earth. You might imagine complex machinery or animals pulling plows, but the tools of the Inca farmer were remarkably simple, yet incredibly effective, perfectly suited to the challenging Andean terrain. Imagine the feeling of a polished wooden handle in your hands, the weight of a bronze tip as you prepare the earth. It was a direct, intimate connection to the soil, A mainstream historical fact is that the primary agricultural tool for the Incas was the foot plow, known as the chacatecla. This wasn't a plow pulled by oxen. It was a long, wooden digging stick, often with a sharpened tip made of stone, wood, or later, bronze, and a footrest near the bottom. You would place your foot on the rest, driving the tool into the ground with your body weight, then lever it back to turn the soil. Imagine the rhythmic motion, a steady push and pull, as you work alongside your family and community members, breaking up the tough Andean earth. It was labor-intensive, yes, but incredibly precise, allowing farmers to navigate the contours of the terraces and rocky slopes where large animal-drawn plows would be useless. It's like using a very specialized ancient garden fork for an entire empire. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the chacatecla wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol of Inca agricultural prowess and communal effort. Some were even adorned with carvings or had specific materials for different ceremonies. Imagine a beautifully crafted chacotacla, perhaps with a bird carved into its handle, used for the first ceremonial planting of maize by the Sapa Inca, as we touched on before. It wasn't just about utility, it was about respect for the process and the bounty it promised. And historians still argue about the exact variations of the chacitacla and whether certain designs were regionally specific or tailored for particular types of soil. Perhaps some were better for the crumbly stuff, while others were designed to tackle the truly stubborn clods. Other essential tools were even simpler. You'd use a hand hoe for weeding and cultivation, and a clod breaker, essentially a heavy wooden mallet to pulverize stubborn clumps of earth. Imagine the repetitive, meditative thud of the clod breaker, slowly transforming rough soil into a finer, more workable medium. Planting seeds was often done by hand, sometimes with a small, pointed stick to create the perfect little hole for each precious seed. It speaks to a level of patience and meticulousness that might seem foreign in our fast-paced world, where efficiency often trumps careful craftsmanship. You see, the simplicity of these tools meant that the Inca farmer had an intimate understanding of their land. You felt the texture of the soil through the chacatecla, adjusted your effort based on the resistance of the earth, and knew exactly where each seed was placed. This wasn't farming by remote control. It was a truly hands-on experience, fostering a deep connection between the farmer and the land they nurtured. It was a quiet dance of effort and patience, resulting in bountiful harvests that sustained millions. So, as you drift off, let the image of these simple, elegant tools, wielded by skilled hands, bring a sense of grounded tranquility to your dreams. The wisdom of the past, found in a well-worn wooden handle. Having explored the tools, let's now delve into the organizational backbone of Inca society, the very system that made these monumental agricultural feats possible, the mita system. This wasn't some ancient version of forced labor, as it's sometimes misunderstood, but rather a sophisticated system of communal public service, deeply ingrained in the Inca worldview. Imagine a quiet, purposeful gathering of villagers, not for a festival, but to collectively build a new terrace wall or clear an irrigation canal. Their synchronized efforts creating a gentle hum across the landscape. A mainstream historical fact is that the meta system was a form of labor tribute, where every able-bodied commoner contributed a certain amount of time each year to public works projects. This could involve farming on state lands, building roads, constructing temples, or crucially, for our story, maintaining agricultural infrastructure like terraces and canals. Unlike European serfdom, meta laborers were not permanently tied to the land, nor were they slaves. They rotated through these duties, providing labor for a set period, after which they returned to their own fields and communities. It was a fluid, organized approach to resource management, ensuring that essential communal projects were completed. It's like a very large, mandatory community garden day. Only instead of weeding your neighbor's tomatoes, you're building an aqueduct that spans a valley. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the meta system also provided a unique form of social security. While performing meta duties, laborers were fed and housed by the state. This meant that even if your personal harvest failed due to drought or frost, you and your family would still be sustained through the state's reserves, which were managed and replenished through the meta system itself. Imagine the quiet reassurance of knowing that, come what may, the empire had your back. It fostered a deep sense of mutual obligation and communal well-being. And historians still argue about the extent to which the meta system was truly voluntary versus compulsory, with many suggesting it was a blend of social expectation and religious duty rather than strict coercion. Perhaps it felt like jury duty, but with much better views and a tangible sense of contributing to something truly grand. The rhythm of the meta was cyclical, interwoven with the agricultural calendar. During planting and harvesting seasons, people primarily focused on their own family plots. Once these crucial tasks were done, a portion of their time would then be dedicated to meta service. This careful scheduling ensured that individual families could sustain themselves, while also contributing to the collective good of the empire. You'd see entire communities mobilizing, moving with a quiet efficiency born of generations of cooperative effort. There was a sense of shared purpose, a collective understanding that their labor built the very foundations of their society. This system allowed the Incas to achieve incredible feats of engineering and agriculture, without the widespread use of currency or a complex market economy. Labor was the currency, and cooperation was the engine. It was a testament to their organizational prowess and their ability to foster a strong sense of community and shared responsibility. So, as you drift deeper into tranquility, let the image of countless hands working in unison, guided by the quiet logic of the meta system, bring a sense of harmonious order to your mind. It was truly a system that transformed individual effort into collective prosperity. As the quiet hum of the meta system fades, let's turn our attention to one of the more peculiar, yet utterly vital aspects of Inca farming: how they managed to fertilize the mountains and valleys to sustain their incredible yields. You see, with so much intensive cultivation, the soil's nutrients would quickly deplete, especially in the challenging Andean environment. Imagine the distinct, earthy aroma carried on the breeze, perhaps a bit stronger than you'd prefer, but a scent of life and growth nonetheless. A mainstream historical fact is the Incas' ingenious use of guano, the droppings of seabirds. You might think, seabirds in the mountains, and you'd be right to wonder. But the Incas, ever resourceful, understood the incredible value of this natural fertilizer. They developed a sophisticated system for mining and transporting guano from the arid coastal islands, sometimes hundreds of miles away, bringing it up to the high-altitude fields. This was a massive logistical undertaking, involving vast fleets of reed boats and long llama caravans. It was considered so precious that specific islands were assigned to particular regions, and disturbing the birds during breeding season was strictly forbidden. punishable by death. It was essentially ancient environmental protection, driven by the purest form of self-interest, ensuring a consistent food supply. Now, for a quirky tidbit, beyond the vast quantities of guano, the Incas also utilized more localized and perhaps more intimate forms of fertilization. They practiced crop rotation, letting fields lie fallow, and extensively used animal manure from their llamas and alpacas. As we touched on earlier, the collection of camelid droppings was a constant, quiet task. Imagine tending your small plot, carefully scattering dried llama pellets around your sprouting maize, knowing that this natural bounty would contribute directly to your family's meal. It's like having a very organic, free-range compost system right in your backyard. Only your backyard is a mountain slope. And historians still argue about the exact proportion of each type of fertilizer used in different regions, or whether certain crops had preferred flavor profiles based on their fertilizer. Perhaps some potatoes truly tasted better with a hint of llama. You can almost feel the dry, powdery texture of the guano as it's carefully spread, or the gentle crumble of dried animal dung between your fingers. This wasn't a haphazard affair. It was a deliberate, calculated effort to return nutrients to the earth. The Incas understood, long before modern chemistry, the importance of soil health. They saw the land not just as a place to extract resources, but as a living entity that needed to be nourished and respected in return for its bounty. This cyclical understanding of reciprocity was deeply embedded in their worldview. The methods varied depending on the region and the available resources. In some areas, ash from burned vegetation might have been incorporated. In others, they might have relied more heavily on green manures, turning fresh plant matter back into the soil. But the common thread was a deep, intuitive knowledge of agricultural ecology. They weren't just throwing things at the ground and hoping for the best. They were actively managing the intricate web of life within the soil. It was a patient, ongoing conversation with the earth, a gentle coaxing of fertility. So, as you drift further into relaxation, let the image of this ancient, organic alchemy, transforming waste into sustenance, bring a sense of quiet contentment to your mind. Having quietly explored the art of soil enrichment, let's now consider another vital aspect of Inca agricultural foresight: their sophisticated methods for seed preservation. In a world where a single bad harvest could spell disaster, safeguarding the future of their crops was paramount. Imagine a cool, dry room, the air still and dark, filled with clay jars and woven baskets, each holding the promise of the next season's bounty. This wasn't just storing seeds. It was safeguarding generations of genetic wisdom. A mainstream historical fact is that the Incas maintained vast, centralized seed banks, often located in secure, well-ventilated structures designed to protect the seeds from pests, moisture, and temperature fluctuations. These were not simply haphazard piles of seeds. They were meticulously organized collections, with different varieties of maize, potatoes, quinoa, and other crops carefully separated and labeled. You can almost picture an ancient Inca agronomist with a quiet solemnity, inspecting rows of stored seeds, ensuring their viability. It was an imperial undertaking, ensuring food security not just for the current year, but for years to come, a kind of biological insurance policy against the unpredictable whims of nature. Now, for a quirky tidbit, beyond the large-scale state storage, individual families and communities also had their own traditional methods of seed preservation. often passed down through generations. These methods could be incredibly localized and specific, from burying seeds in cool, dry pits to storing them in woven baskets hung from rafters, allowing for air circulation. Imagine a grandmother carefully selecting the best maize cobs from the harvest, braiding them together and hanging them in the loft, a quiet ritual performed year after year. It's a testament to the quiet, continuous passing down of practical knowledge within families. And historians still argue whether there was a formalized system for sharing these localized seed varieties across the empire, or if it relied more on informal exchange and community networks. Perhaps there was an ancient seed swap meet, complete with friendly bartering and quiet gossip. You see, the diversity of Inca crops, especially the thousands of potato varieties, wasn't just about adapting to different climates. It was also a strategy for resilience. If a particular pest or disease struck one variety, others might be resistant, ensuring that total crop failure was far less likely. This meant preserving a wide genetic pool was as important as preserving individual seeds. They were, in essence, practicing what we now call biodiversity conservation thousands of years ago, not out of academic interest, but out of absolute necessity for survival. The care taken in preparing seeds for storage was meticulous. Seeds would be thoroughly dried, often in the sun, to reduce their moisture content and prevent mold or rot. Clay pots, gourd containers, and tightly woven baskets were all used, sealed, to protect against insects and rodents. Imagine the quiet rustle of dried seeds as they were poured from one container to another, a gentle, soothing sound. This attention to detail ensured that when the next planting season arrived, the seeds would be vibrant and ready to sprout, carrying within them the promise of new life and continued sustenance. It was a humble yet profound act of faith in the cycles of nature, a quiet preparation for the future. As you drift deeper into the quietude of Inca agricultural wisdom, let us turn our attention to perhaps the greatest challenge they faced: the incredibly diverse and often unforgiving climate challenges of the Andes and their ingenious adaptations to them. Imagine a single day where you might experience blazing sun, sudden torrential rain, and then a bone-chilling frost, all within a few hours. This wasn't just weather. It was a character in the grand drama of Inca farming, demanding constant vigilance and remarkable foresight. A mainstream historical fact is that the Inca Empire spanned an astonishing range of ecological zones, from arid coastal deserts to humid Amazonian jungles, and most importantly, for our story, the dramatic elevation changes of the Andes. This meant they encountered every climatic extreme imaginable: crippling droughts, sudden hailstorms, devastating floods, and unpredictable frosts at high altitudes. They couldn't simply plant one crop and hope for the best across their vast domain. Their agriculture had to be a masterclass in adaptation, a mosaic of strategies tailored to each specific microclimate. You can almost feel the biting wind on the Altiplano one moment, then the humid warmth of a lower valley the next. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the Incas developed a system of vertical archipelago farming, where different crops were cultivated at specific altitudes to take advantage of varying temperatures and rainfall. You'd see maize in the warmer valleys, potatoes and quinoa higher up, and even coca leaves in the subtropical cloud forests. It was like having a multi-story farm, with each floor specializing in a different produce. This wasn't just about efficiency. It was a brilliant way to mitigate risk. If a frost wiped out potatoes at 3,800 meters, there might still be a harvest of maize at 2,500 meters. Imagine an Inca farmer explaining this complex system to a bewildered modern agriculturalist who just wants to know if they can grow genetically modified soybeans at every single elevation. And historians still argue about the precise degree of specialization and trade between these different ecological zones, or whether communities aimed for near self-sufficiency within their own vertical farming bands. Perhaps it was a friendly competition to see who could grow the widest array of produce. Their adaptations extended beyond just choosing the right altitude for the right crop. They employed sophisticated techniques to manage specific weather events. For instance, the terraces we discussed earlier weren't just for erosion control. Their stone walls absorbed solar radiation during the day and slowly released it at night, creating localized warmth that protected delicate plants from frost. Imagine the subtle warmth emanating from the stone after a sunny day, like a gentle, natural radiator guarding the precious sprouts. For drought periods, their elaborate irrigation systems ensured water was channeled precisely where it was needed, minimizing evaporation and maximizing delivery. They also practiced dry farming in some areas, relying on residual soil moisture and deep root crops. You might also observe the Incas building raised fields in certain waterlogged areas, creating elevated planting beds surrounded by canals. These systems helped regulate soil temperature and moisture, allowing cultivation in otherwise unusable land. It was about turning perceived weaknesses of the environment into strengths, a quiet defiance of nature's harsher whims. This constant innovation and meticulous observation of their environment allowed the Incas to create an agricultural empire that was remarkably resilient, a testament to their deep understanding of the land and its unpredictable moods. So, as you drift further into sleep, let the image of their adaptable wisdom, flourishing against all odds, bring a sense of secure tranquility to your dreams. As the subtle hum of climate adaptation fades into the background, let us consider another fascinating aspect of Inca agriculture: how the bounty of their fields directly supported the very apex of their society. Farming for the Sapa Inca. You see, the Inca emperor wasn't just a ruler. He was considered a living deity, and his sustenance, along with that of the vast state apparatus, came directly from the meticulous management of agricultural surplus. Imagine carefully selected crops being harvested from vast state lands, destined not for local consumption, but for the imperial storehouses, a silent tribute to the divine ruler. A mainstream historical fact is that a significant portion of the agricultural output from across the empire was designated for the state and the Inca religion. This wasn't a tax in the modern sense. It was a system of tribute paid in labor and in produce. Fields were often divided into three parts: one for the local community, one for the state, and one for the gods. You'd work your own fields, then the community fields, then the state and religious fields. This ensured a constant flow of resources to Cusco, the imperial capital, and to the various administrative centers and temples scattered throughout the empire. It was an incredibly efficient, non-monetary economic system. Now for a quirky tidbit: the Sapa Inca and the nobility often had access to the finest and most exotic produce cultivated across the empire's diverse ecological zones. Imagine the imperial table laden with fruits from the Amazonian lowlands, Potatoes from the highest altiplano and specially cultivated maize varieties, all brought together by the vast Inca road network. It was like having the ultimate farm-totable experience. Only the farm spanned an entire continent, and the table was reserved for a living god. And historians still argue about the precise mechanisms by which these luxury goods were transported and distributed to the imperial court, or whether the Sapa Inca had particular favorite varieties of potatoes for specific ceremonial meals. Perhaps he had a secret stash of purple corn for his breakfast chicha. The produce designated for the state served multiple purposes. It fed the Sapa Inca, his extensive retinue, and the large bureaucracy that administered the empire. It also provisioned the Inca army, allowing for rapid deployment and sustained campaigns across vast distances. Imagine a disciplined line of porters, laden with dried maize and chuño, marching along a meticulously paved Inca road, heading towards a distant outpost. This state-controlled food supply was a critical factor in the Incas' ability to expand and maintain their vast empire. It demonstrated the strategic genius embedded within their agricultural planning. Furthermore, these surpluses were also used to feed the meta laborers while they were performing their state duties, providing aid during times of famine, and supporting religious festivals. It was a kind of vast, centralized welfare system, underpinned by diligent agricultural production. You could say that the stability and power of the Inca Empire literally grew from the earth, harvested and managed with remarkable foresight. So, as you gently drift off, picture the quiet abundance flowing from the fields to the heart of the empire, a testament to the organizational power that humble farming could provide, building upon the quiet understanding of how farming supported the Sapa Inca. Let us now delve into, perhaps, one of the most astonishing logistical achievements of the Inca Empire: their sophisticated food storage innovations. In a land of unpredictable climates and vast distances, the ability to store immense quantities of food for long periods was not merely convenient. It was absolutely essential for survival, for supporting armies, and for mitigating famine. Imagine meticulously organized rows of buildings, dotting hillsides like silent sentinels, each one a testament to foresight and collective security. A mainstream historical fact is the ubiquitous presence of qollqas, which were stay-toned storehouses. These weren't just sheds, they were purpose-built structures, often located on cool, windy hillsides to maximize natural ventilation, thus preventing spoilage. You'd find them in groups, sometimes hundreds of them together, neatly aligned, resembling quiet, ancient warehouses. The contents of these qollqas were meticulously tracked using the quipu system, ensuring that vast quantities of potatoes, quinoa, maize, and other foodstuffs could be managed and distributed across the empire as needed. It was an inventory system that would make many modern logistics managers nod in quiet appreciation. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the design of the qollqas themselves varied based on what was being stored and the local climate. Those for potatoes and chuño might have raised floors and excellent airflow to prevent rot. Those for maize might have been specifically designed to deter rodents. Imagine an Inca architect, perhaps with a knowing glint in their eye, explaining how a particular angle of the roof or the placement of small vents would ensure the perfect humidity for dried peppers. It's almost as if they had an ancient agricultural engineering manual filled with very practical, common-sense solutions. And historians still argue about the exact methods of pest control employed in these qollqas, whether certain herbs were used to repel insects, or if the sheer scale and constant turnover of goods was enough to keep infestations at bay. Perhaps a well-fed guard llama was also part of the security detail. You can almost feel the dry, cool air circulating through a qollqa, the faint scent of dried maize and chuño lingering. These structures were often built from local stone or adobe in drier regions, designed to blend seamlessly into the landscape, yet stand resilient against the elements. Their placement on hillsides wasn't just for ventilation. It also made them easier to defend and more accessible from the extensive Inca road network. When you remember that these vast reserves were accumulated through the meta labor system, you realize the profound connection between the communal effort of farming and the empire's ability to withstand periods of scarcity. The sheer volume of food stored in these qollqas was staggering. Estimates suggest they could hold enough provisions to feed the entire empire for several years. This foresight meant that even in times of localized drought or pest outbreaks, the Sapa Inca could draw upon these reserves to prevent widespread famine, fostering loyalty and stability. It was the ultimate expression of centralized planning for the collective good. So, as you drift gently into sleep, let the image of these silent, enduring storehouses, filled with the quiet promise of sustenance, bring a profound sense of security to your dreams. Having peacefully explored the marvels of Inca food storage, let us now immerse ourselves in the spiritual heart of their agricultural year, the rituals of the harvest. For the Incas, farming was never just a practical endeavor. It was deeply intertwined with their cosmology, their respect for the earth goddess Pachamama, and their supplication to the sun god Inti. Imagine the gentle rhythm of drums and flutes, the quiet murmur of prayers, as communities gathered, not just to gather crops, but to give thanks and ensure future bounty. A mainstream historical fact is that the Inca agricultural calendar was punctuated by numerous ceremonies and festivals, each marking a crucial stage in the planting, growing, and harvesting cycle. These rituals were not mere superstitions. They were essential communal acts that reinforced social bonds, expressed gratitude, and sought divine favor. You'd see elaborate processions, offerings of chicha and coca leaves, and communal feasting. The very act of farming was a sacred dialogue with the forces of nature, a partnership between humans and the divine. It was a time when the practical and the spiritual seamlessly merged, much like the gentle blending of colors in an Andean sunset. Now, for a quirky tidbit, one of the most important ceremonies was the Inti Raymi, the festival of the sun, celebrated around the winter solstice. While it honored the sun god, it also had profound agricultural significance, marking the end of the harvest and the preparation for the next planting cycle. Imagine the Sapa Inca himself leading a grand procession, perhaps performing a symbolic plowing, all to ensure the sun's continued benevolence for the crops. It's like having a gigantic, empire-wide thank you party for the biggest star in our solar system, with a quiet plea for more good weather. And historians still argue about the exact sequence and meaning of certain minor rituals within these major festivals, or whether specific dances were believed to encourage particular kinds of rainfall. Perhaps a gentle sway was thought to bring a gentle drizzle, while vigorous stomping invoked a downpour. You can almost hear the low chanting, feel the crisp mountain air on your skin, as incense drifts lazily upwards. During harvest, specific fields might have been designated as sacred, their produce offered directly to the gods. You'd observe offerings made to Pachamama, the Earth Mother, perhaps by gently pouring a little chicha onto the soil before collecting the first fruits of the harvest. This was an act of reciprocity, acknowledging that the earth provided sustenance and deserved respect and nourishment in return. It wasn't about taking, it was about a harmonious exchange. The entire community participated in these rituals, from the humblest farmer to the highest priest. It fostered a deep sense of shared identity and purpose, reinforcing the idea that their well-being was inextricably linked to the health of the land and the favor of the gods. These were moments of collective joy and quiet reverence, where the hard work of farming culminated in a celebration of life itself. So, as you drift further into relaxation, let the gentle echoes of ancient songs and the soft reverence for the earth bring a profound sense of peace to your dreams. Continuing our gentle exploration of Inca life, let's now consider a more esoteric, yet equally fascinating, connection between their spirituality and agriculture. The use of ayahuasca and agricultural vision. While perhaps not a simple pleasure in the traditional sense, the ritualistic use of certain psychoactive plants offered the Incas a unique pathway to understanding and perhaps even foreseeing the subtle energies of their land and its cycles. Imagine a hushed, contemplative gathering under the vast Andean stars, seeking wisdom not from books, but from within, guided by ancient plant spirits. A mainstream historical fact is that various plant-based psychoactive substances, including but not limited to the San Pedro cactus, and potentially precursor forms of what we now call ayahuasca, were used by Inca shamans and spiritual leaders. These were not recreational drugs, they were sacred tools, employed within highly controlled ceremonial contexts to induce altered states of consciousness. The purpose was often divinatory, diagnostic, or for seeking spiritual guidance, including insights related to the health of the crops, the prediction of weather patterns, or understanding imbalances in the natural world. It was a serious, deeply respected practice, far removed from modern recreational use. Now for a quirky tidbit. While concrete archaeological evidence for widespread ayahuasca use, specifically by the Inca elite, is still a subject of scholarly debate, historians still argue whether its use was widespread across all social strata or confined to specific groups and regions. It's clear that other visionary plants were indeed central to Andean spiritual practices long before and during the Inca period. Some theories suggest that certain agricultural decisions, like the timing of planting or the selection of specific fields, might have been influenced by insights gained during these altered states. Imagine a wise elder, after a night of deep communion with the plant spirits, quietly advising the community on the subtle shifts in the earth's energy that might favor a particular potato variety that season. It's like having a very ancient, very profound agricultural consultant. Only their office hours involved stargazing and introspection rather than PowerPoint presentations. You can almost feel the quiet intensity of such a ceremony. The rhythmic drumming, the soft chanting, as the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms began to blur. The visions were not meant to be chaotic, but rather to reveal patterns, connections, and deeper truths about the universe and their place within it. For an agrarian society whose very existence depended on the benevolence of nature, seeking direct communication with the spirits of the land and sky was a logical extension of their spiritual beliefs. It was a profound act of humility and a deep commitment to harmony with their environment. These plantain-induced visions weren't about predicting the exact number of potatoes per stalk, but about a broader, more intuitive understanding of agricultural well-being. They might have helped identify potential environmental stressors, guided decisions on resource allocation, or simply reinforced the community's spiritual connection to Pachamama and Inti. It was a practice rooted in respect and a desire for profound ecological balance. So, as you gently drift off, allow the intriguing thought of ancient wisdom, sought through quiet contemplation and natural vision, to bring a sense of mystery and depth to your peaceful sleep. Having touched upon the more mystical aspects of Inca life, let's return to a more tangible, yet equally significant plant that permeated nearly every aspect of their daily existence, including farming: the coca leaf. Often misunderstood today, for the Incas, it was far more than a stimulant. It was a sacred plant, a mild analgesic, a hunger suppressant, and a crucial component of social and religious life. Imagine the subtle, earthy scent of fresh coca leaves being quietly chewed as you work alongside others in the fields, providing a gentle lift to sustain long hours of labor. A mainstream historical fact is that the coca leaf was cultivated in the warm, humid valleys and eastern slopes of the Andes. Its leaves were traditionally chewed, often mixed with a bit of alkaline substance like lime or ash to release the active compounds. This practice provided a mild, stimulating effect, akin to a strong cup of coffee, but also helped suppress hunger, thirst, and fatigue, and alleviated the symptoms of altitude sickness. For farmers working at high elevations, performing strenuous tasks, a small wad of coca leaves was an invaluable aid, allowing them to endure longer and with greater comfort. It was the original energy bar, but much more natural and without the unnecessary wrappers. Now, for a quirky tidbit, the Incas regarded coca as a divine plant, a gift from the gods. Its use was largely restricted to the nobility, priests, and laborers engaged in strenuous state projects. But farmers were also permitted its use, especially in higher altitudes. Imagine a quiet moment during a break in farming, where a small pouch of coca leaves is passed around, a sign of camaraderie and shared effort. It wasn't about seeking euphoria. It was about resilience and endurance, a gentle support system. And historians still argue about the exact social protocols surrounding coca chewing, or whether certain rituals dictated the sharing of leaves based on age or status. Perhaps there was an unspoken etiquette for offering the best leaves to the most seasoned farmer. You can almost feel the gentle numbness that would spread through your mouth, the quiet clarity of mind it brought. Beyond its practical applications, coca was integral to religious ceremonies and rituals. It was offered to Pachamama and other deities, burned as incense, and used in divination. Imagine a shaman gently blowing powdered coca leaves to interpret omens for the upcoming harvest, seeking guidance for the community's agricultural endeavors. This spiritual connection elevated the plant beyond mere utility. It became a bridge between the human and divine worlds. The cultivation of coca itself was a specialized form of farming, requiring specific climatic conditions found only in certain regions. These fields were carefully tended, and the harvest of the leaves was a delicate process, often done by hand. The leaves were then dried and prepared for distribution across the empire. So, as you drift further into relaxation, let the quiet hum of enduring effort, sustained by the humble yet sacred coca leaf, bring a sense of profound resilience and connection to the ancient land to your peaceful sleep. It was a plant that quietly empowered an empire, moving beyond the direct sustenance and sustenance aids. Let's broaden our tranquil view of Inca agriculture to encompass other vital crops that, while not always eaten, were woven into the very fabric of daily life. Beyond food, cotton, and dyes, the Inca Empire, with its vast ecological zones, was a master of cultivating diverse plants that provided not just nourishment, but also materials for clothing, crafts, and even vibrant artistic expression. Imagine fields of soft white cotton swaying in a warm valley breeze, or the rich hues of dye plants creating a painter's palette on the landscape. A mainstream historical fact is that cotton was a critically important fiber crop, particularly in the warmer coastal and lowland regions of the empire, while wool from llamas and alpacas was paramount in the cold highlands. Cotton provided a lighter, breathable alternative for clothing in the more temperate and tropical zones. It was also used for fishing nets, bags, and various woven goods. You'd see communities specializing in cotton cultivation, their daily rhythm dictated by the growth and harvest of this versatile plant. It was a quieter, less dramatic harvest than maize or potatoes, but no less essential for the comfort and practicality of Inca life. Now for a quirky tidbit. The Incas cultivated naturally colored cotton varieties, including shades of brown and green, long before the modern concept of organic or naturally dyed fabrics. Imagine a weaver creating intricate textiles, not needing to rely solely on external dyes for color, but drawing upon the inherent hues of the cotton fibers themselves. It's like having a built-in color palette directly from the earth. And historians still argue whether these naturally colored varieties were deliberately bred for their unique aesthetics, or if their existence was simply a happy accident of nature that the Incas wisely utilized. Perhaps it was a quiet joy for weavers to see the subtle variations in earth-toned threads. Beyond cotton, the Incas meticulously cultivated various plants for dyes. Their textiles are renowned for their vibrant and lasting colors, a testament to their mastery of natural pigments. Imagine fields of cochineal cacti, from which a brilliant red dye was extracted from tiny insects living on the plant, or plants like relbinium, hypocarpium for reds, chinchero for yellows, and indigo for blues. Each dye plant represented a distinct agricultural niche, requiring specific growing conditions and careful harvesting. You can almost smell the earthy pungency of the dye vats, seeing hands stained with rich, natural colors. The process of extracting and fixing these dyes was complex and highly skilled, often a specialized craft. It involved meticulous knowledge of plant properties, mordants, and precise timing. The resulting threads, once woven into textiles, were not just clothing. They were visual narratives, conveying social status, regional identity, and sometimes even historical events. So, as you drift gently into sleep, picture the quiet dedication of farmers tending these diverse crops, and the skilled hands of weavers transforming their bounty into a vibrant tapestry of life, rich with natural colors and textures. It was another dimension of their peaceful, practical connection to the land. As we gently approach the twilight of our historical journey, let us cast our gaze forward and consider the enduring impact of Inca farming, its agricultural legacy today. You might assume that such ancient methods have been entirely superseded by modern technology, but you'd be mistaken. The wisdom of the Incas continues to whisper across the Andean landscape, influencing contemporary farming practices and offering valuable lessons for a world grappling with food security and sustainable agriculture. Imagine seeing an ancient terraced field, still green with crops, being tended by descendants of the Inca, a living bridge across centuries. A mainstream historical fact is that many of the core agricultural practices developed by the Incas, particularly terracing and irrigation, are still in use in the Andes today. Indigenous communities continue to cultivate native crops like potatoes and quinoa using techniques remarkably similar to those of their ancestors, often on the very same ancient terraces. You can still see farmers using variations of the chacatacla in remote areas, a testament to its enduring efficiency and suitability for the terrain. This isn't just about preserving tradition. It's about practical knowledge passed down through generations, proving its resilience and effectiveness. Now for a quirky tidbit. Modern agronomists and sustainable farming advocates are actively studying Inca agricultural methods for insights into climate change adaptation and biodiversity. The Incas' mastery of creating microclimates within their terraces, their extensive seed preservation strategies, and their cultivation of thousands of climate-resilient crop varieties offer a treasure trove of information. Imagine a group of international scientists, perhaps looking a little bewildered in their Gore-Tex jackets, marveling at a 500-year-old terraced field, realizing that ancient wisdom might hold the key to future food systems. It's almost as if the Incas were secretly preparing for global warming all along. And historians still argue about the extent to which modern genetic research can fully unlock the secrets of Inca crop breeding, or whether the full ecological wisdom is something that can only be truly understood by direct experience in the Andean environment. Perhaps some secrets are best kept by the mountains themselves. You can almost feel the continuity, the subtle thread connecting past and present. The emphasis on crop diversity, for instance, is a critical lesson from the Incas. While modern agriculture often favors monocultures for efficiency, the Inca approach of cultivating thousands of varieties across diverse ecological zones provided incredible resilience against pests, diseases, and unpredictable weather. This approach is gaining renewed appreciation today as we seek more sustainable and robust food systems. Moreover, the communal aspect of Inca farming, exemplified by the mita system, continues to resonate in modern indigenous communities, where cooperative labor and shared resources remain vital. The idea that agriculture is a collective endeavor, deeply intertwined with community, well-being, and respect for the earth, is a powerful legacy. So, as you drift gently into sleep, let the image of ancient wisdom flowing into the present, nourishing both land and people, bring a sense of timeless hope and quiet inspiration to your dreams. The Incas' agricultural innovations were not just for their time, they continue to teach us today. As our journey through the simple pleasures of Inca farming winds down, let's allow the rich tapestry of images and sensations to gently fade one by one. You've walked the terraced fields, felt the chill of the altiplano, and sensed the quiet industry of an empire built on diligent hands and profound environmental understanding. Now, Imagine the last rays of the setting sun casting long shadows across those very same ancient terraces, painting the mountain peaks in hues of purple and gold. A mainstream historical fact that encapsulates this sense of fading and enduring legacy is the way the Inca Empire itself, despite its remarkable agricultural achievements, eventually succumbed to external forces. While their farming sustained millions for centuries, the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors, bringing new diseases and a different mode of conquest, ultimately led to the empire's decline. You might find a poignant silence in that fact, recognizing that even the most meticulously cultivated system can face unforeseen challenges. Yet, the seeds of their agricultural wisdom, quite literally, survived. Now for a quirky tidbit, almost a whisper from the past. Many remote Inca agricultural sites, like the circular terraces of Moray, were effectively lost to the outside world for centuries after the Spanish conquest, swallowed by dense vegetation or simply overlooked. It was only through the rediscovery efforts of explorers and archaeologists in the 20th century that their full ingenuity began to be appreciated again. Imagine these complex, beautiful structures, quietly holding their secrets for hundreds of years, patiently waiting to be seen again like a forgotten dream. And historians still argue about the extent to which indigenous knowledge continued to preserve these practices in isolation, even when larger imperial structures collapsed, or if some techniques truly had to be relearned through archaeological study. Perhaps the earth itself guarded its secrets, waiting for the right moment to reveal them once more. You can almost feel the cool evening air descending, the faint scent of damp earth rising as the day's warmth dissipates. The rhythmic murmur of an ancient stream channeling water through stone-lined canals becomes a soft, constant lullaby. The vibrant colors of the quinoa fields dim to muted tones, and the strong stalks of maize stand sentinel against the darkening sky. The gentle hum of communal labor is replaced by the quiet sounds of nocturnal creatures stirring, a bat perhaps flitting silently past a qollqa, or a distant llama's soft, contented hum. This evening brings a moment of reflection, a time to appreciate the profound connection the Inca people had with their land. Their farming wasn't just about survival. It was about harmony, innovation, and a deep respect for the natural world. Every terrace, every irrigation channel, every carefully selected seed spoke of a quiet wisdom, a patient dedication to coaxing life from the challenging Andean environment. You realize that the simple pleasures of farming were, in fact, incredibly complex acts of engineering, ecology, and community, all working in quiet unison. As you let go of the specific details, the overall feeling of peace and ingenuity remains. Now, as the quiet moments of our historical journey deepen, and the echoes of ancient ingenuity begin to soften, allow yourself to slowly drift even further into tranquility. The faint outlines of the terraced mountains begin to blur. The sounds of the Andean wind become a gentle whisper, and the concepts of hard work and clever innovation give way to pure, soothing sensation. You are no longer observing. You are simply being enveloped by the peaceful conclusion of this quiet, historical exploration. The image of the vast Inca Empire, fed by humble yet brilliant farming, now gently recedes, leaving behind only the most calming impressions. Think of the rhythmic trickle of water through ancient canals, a timeless melody designed to bring life to dry earth, now a quiet lullaby for your mind. Picture the soft, earthy scent of rich soil, warmed by the sun and nurtured by ancient hands, a comforting aroma that grounds you. Feel the subtle, calming presence of the llamas and alpacas, their soft wool and gentle hum contributing to the serene atmosphere. Their silent guardianship, a promise of enduring peace. Let the final images be those of quiet abundance, fields of resilient potatoes, hidden beneath the earth, promising sustenance. The shimmering, almost magical colors of quinoa dancing gently in an imperceptible breeze. The tall, proud stalks of maize standing sentinel under an expansive, star-dusted sky, each a testament to a harmonious relationship between humanity and nature. A dance of give and take that sustained an entire civilization with quiet grace. There is no urgency here, no demanding task, only the gentle satisfaction of a day's labor well done, a harvest brought in, a community nourished. The ancient agricultural wisdom, once a topic of fascinating study, now transforms into a soothing balm for your senses. The complex engineering of the terraces, the meticulous irrigation systems, the careful preservation of seeds, all these details soften into a comforting assurance that even in challenging environments, human ingenuity, when coupled with respect for the earth, can create enduring harmony. You are simply floating on a quiet current of historical contentment, carried by the gentle flow of time and the timeless wisdom of the Andes. The subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in temperature, the quiet rustle of unseen leaves, the distant, almost imagined call of an Andean bird. These are the final sensory details, blending seamlessly into the stillness. As you allow your consciousness to soften further, realize that the journey through Inca farming has reached its peaceful end. There is nothing more to learn tonight, nothing more to ponder, only the serene feeling of having gently connected with a past where life moved at a quieter, more deliberate pace, a pace conducive to rest. The details of chacateclas and qollqas dissolve, leaving only the essence of peaceful productivity and profound connection to the earth. Let your breathing become even slower, deeper, softer. Imagine yourself nestled securely within the ancient landscape, cradled by the very mountains that the Incas so meticulously tended. The last vestiges of thought begin to drift away, like wisps of mist rising from a valley floor at dawn. You are utterly comfortable, utterly at peace, ready to surrender to the deepest, most restorative sleep. The quiet legacy of Inca agriculture has delivered its final, most precious harvest. Your complete and utter calm. Sweet dreams.